I'm Angus Fraser. I'm currently in the second year of my STP training. I'm specializing in radiation safety and diagnostic radiology, so one of the medical physics specialisms. And I'm going to give a presentation on the format and structure of the STP and also a little bit about the opportunities available to medical physicists on completion of the program. And I'll remind everyone as well, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A function on Zoom. We'll answer what we can on Zoom, but questions that don't have short, simple answers, we'll do our best to answer them during the Q&A session at the end of this little series of talks. And we'll break for lunch after that Q&A session as well. So on to the presentation. So what is the STP? It's a three-year graduate level program which integrates work-based training and academic study in a specific clinical science specialism. And STP trainees, well, what are they? First, they are salaried employees of an NHS trust. They're paid at band 6, which is currently paid at just over £35,000. So you get paid a fairly decent salary to train, and that includes the time that you're at university as well. STP trainees, they also complete a program of work-based training on top of the fully funded part-time master's degree in clinical science, and that'll specifically be in your specialism as well. And the overall aim of the training is to obtain HCPC registration as a clinical scientist upon completion so that you can legally practice as a clinical scientist. So what's the purpose of the STP? So we want to invest in training up future clinical scientists. The NHS, they always need more. We also need to make sure that trainees successfully complete the program, possess the required scientific knowledge and ability to apply that knowledge to in a clinical environment. Trainees will also grow their professional practice and clinical leadership skills and are expected to not only be competent in their judgment, but confident as well, because you do have a lot of responsibility, and your judgment, you need to be sure of it as well as correct. And most importantly, by ensuring that clinical scientists are trained well, they will have a direct positive impact on patient care and clinical outcomes, and the degree of involvement of clinical sciences in just any clinical work, it's massive as well. So they're crucial to the function of the NHS. So what are the application routes for the STP? Well, there are two of them. There are direct entry, which is what most people do, but there's in-service entry as well. So that the difference between the two is that in-service entry is for NHS staff working in already working in a recognized scientific specialty, and they'll be nominated by their employer to an in-service entry post. But what are all of the different specialisms? Well, this is a list of the specialisms that one can apply to. This is up to date as of yesterday, what's on the school's website. But new specialisms are brought in where there's a demonstrable need for them. And a recent example of this would be clinical scientific computing as well. And although there might not be a lot of day-to-day interaction between the specialisms, there are trainee networks in different regions in the country. So here at Oxford, as some of our panelists have already mentioned before, we do offer a fairly large variety of services, and we do work with other trusts and sites. So there's a fairly large trainee network, and we also meet every month, and in those meetings, there are talks from all types of trainees, as well as other professions. So in these presentations, these trainees could be talking about their specialism, research projects that they're working on. And this provides very good opportunities not only to develop your communication skills with groups outside your specialism, but you also learn about other areas of clinical science and how they're important rather than only focusing on your own specialism. But the specialisms that are being covered today, we're focusing on medical physics, clinical engineering, and scientific computing, as highlighted here. And for medical physics, there are 4 separate specialisms, but if you choose to apply to medical physics undefined, as already said before, you go on to move into one of these other specialisms after your first year. So the specialisms for medical physics are nuclear medicine, radiation safety and diagnostic radiology, radiotherapy, and imaging with non-ionizing radiation. So as already said, you can apply to these directly or apply to medical physics undefined and choose which specialism you want to go into after you've had a chance to experience all of them. And that's around the end of your first year. But in Oxford, we will now only be offering undefined posts. And for clinical engineering and scientific computing, there aren't subspecialisms, at least in the context of the STP. So you just apply to them. And as I already mentioned before, there are 2 main parts that make up the STP. There's a workplace training and the academic study. So for the academic study, you'll attend lectures or you will undertake a part-time master's over the entirety of your 3-year training program at your assigned university. So so the National School for Healthcare Science is the organization that kind of coordinates all of the training. So they facilitate both the workplace training and the university. They kind of marry it all up. And they're also the organization that you apply through. And they are also responsible for ensuring that you fulfill all the necessary criteria for becoming a clinical scientist, both in the academic side and the workplace training side. For your workplace training, you will be based at your NHS trust. You'll be employed by the NHS trust for the entirety of your training program, and the work that you do will primarily be within that trust. However, that trust might be spread across different sites, and that just depends on the trust as well. Or they might do a lot of work, say provide services to other trusts like we do here at Oxford. We provide services to Swindon, but also Reading and soon to be Milton Keynes as well. And your workplace training. So the first year, that's at least for medical physics, your first year, you'll be spending that doing rotations, and they're going to last around 4 to 8 weeks each. but the exact structure and timing of these rotations, it's down to your department how they plan it out. And that will allow you to just experience all the different areas within your specialism. Your second and third years are spent training within your chosen specialist area, but there will be plenty of collaboration between these different areas throughout your second and third year as well. So here, say for myself, radiation safety and diagnostic radiology, there's still a lot of radiation safety work to be done with radiotherapy as well as nuclear medicine. So I regularly do work with these sections as well. There's also professional practice training, and that's going to be done throughout the entirety of the 3 years. So this covers more things like, say, scientific engagement and communication, and that could be with public or patients or, say, medical staff, and developing your communication skills in general, participating in professional meetings, reflecting on your own performance in different situations, etc. And in terms of how all this work, how does all of this work demonstrate that you, or how does all this work go into essentially your qualification as a clinical scientist? Well, you build up a portfolio of the evidence of the work that you have done and over the whole 3 years, and that will basically be used to demonstrate that, yes, you are qualified to be a clinical scientist and practice as one. So the university part as well. So that, as I've already said, is a part-time master's over the whole 3-year program. There will be blocks of lectures and exams throughout, and you will be given paid study leave to attend these. So you'll be on full pay while you're at university, which is just absolutely amazing feeling, makes a big difference from undergraduate as well. And you're also going to be provided an additional training budget to cover travel and expenses costs as well, because not everyone can just commute from their trust to the university. So you'll be given a budget so that you can travel and get accommodation near the university when you've got those blocks. So the specific course structure and timetable for lectures, exams, and such, it varies between universities. So, for example, with King's, the first part is basically just an entire semester that you start a couple of weeks after you start the STP, and that's followed in your second year by a more broken up and fragmented block of teaching. So go away for a week, 1 week, another week you might be there for 3 days. And then after that second block of teaching, we'll just be working on our MSc research project as well. But the specific university that you attend, that's determined by the national school and is based on your specialism and the trust that you're employed by. So it will vary between different universities. So there are different master's courses which are provided through the STP. So for medical physics, as I've said, we attended King's, but there's also Liverpool, Newcastle, and Swansea. They offer medical physics courses through the STP. For clinical engineering, the only one is King's, and for scientific computing, it is Liverpool. So all the trainees for clinical engineering and scientific computing, they will all go to the same university, whereas medical physics, there's a few different ones that they can go to. But as I believe this is already mentioned, but there are other accredited MSc courses which would be recognized by the national school. However, they're provided outside of the STP. And if you already have one of these, for example, from Surrey, I believe, you would be allowed to forego some of the assessments, but the specifics of that also depends on the university as far as I know. So this is basically just a diagram to illustrate what I described before. So foundation modules at university and rotations are done in first year, and specialist modules and specialist modules and specialism training are done in second and third year alongside your master's project, and spanning all 3 years is your professional practice training as well. So how are you assessed? There are multiple different assessment methods. So for the MSc, you'll be examined by the university, so actual exams or coursework as well. You've also got your master's dissertation. For the work-based training, though, you're continuously assessed by your training supervisors. So for physics, for example, this will involve with carrying out or assisting with tasks and submitting a reflective write-up so that you can demonstrate your understanding and also reflect on what you've learned, what you didn't know, or kind of what you expected going in, how it differs, that kind of thing. And this is then submitted to a training supervisor who will review it, give feedback, and hopefully sign it off. There are also some other work-based assessments as well, such as case-based discussions, where it's you have a topic, you discuss, there's back and forth, and that's just to see if you, one, understand the topic, but also recognize kind of the limitations of your knowledge as well, and also know where to look and how to solve a problem, rather than just being able to rattle off knowledge. There's direct observation of practical skills, so that you will do a task yourself and an assessor will basically feedback on how well you did it. You understand what you were doing, why you were doing it. There's observed clinical events as well, which assess clinical encounters. So that could be with other medical physics staff, or it could be a patient, or it could be medical staff. And also there is a final assessment, but this is currently being redesigned. And so far what we know is that it will consist of a standardized professional discussion, and there won't be additional written work that you need to submit beforehand. So the aim of that is basically to ensure that you're able to practice safely, competently, and independently. And we should know more about what the final assessment will be soon. So this diagram that, again, summarizes what I've described. Once you've completed your e-portfolio, the university components in the final assessment, you can apply to register as a clinical scientist. And there's also annual reviews just to check your progress, how you're progressing through the training program, and highlight any areas of concern, so things that you just need to maybe pick up the pace on or just put a little bit more attention in. But once you're registered, you can then apply for Band 7 jobs as a clinical scientist. So that's around 43,000 per year at the moment. So fairly good salary, and there's such high demand that you're almost guaranteed a job. So opportunities after the STP, these were mentioned before, but you could get, in medical physics at least, there are multiple professional qualifications that you can go for. So medical physics expert, radiation protection advisor, radioactive waste advisor, laser protection advisor. And obtaining each of these basically means that you're qualified to provide advice for achieving compliance with a certain set of regulations. And each of them also involves building some form of portfolio to demonstrate your expertise, competence, and understanding. But it's generally easier to get more after you get your first one of those as well. And these 3 years in the STP, you'll hopefully not have too much trouble building up these portfolios of evidence as well. You could also go for a more research oriented, or you could pivot more towards research, and that could, for example, consist of going and doing a PhD as well, while still retaining your job once you've completed it. And there's also the higher specialist scientist training, and that's more advanced training, also run by the National School. At the end of that, you get a doctorate in clinical science, and that enables you to apply for consultant clinical scientist positions. So a lot more responsibility, but also a fairly good salary as well. And you can also find out more at the National School's website, and the curriculum library will also give you a lot of information on really what we do during the STP as well. And the Health Careers website just gives you a kind of idea of the kind of things that you can do once you are trained as a clinical scientist. Thank you all very much for listening. And again, if you have any questions, please post them using the Q&A function. And I will now hand you over to my colleague Elizabeth for the next talk.